Forgiveness is one of those topics that tends to make people mad, especially around divorce. But I think that this is actually because of a misunderstanding about what forgiveness actually is, who it benefits, who it's for, and what it means. So in this video, let's have a candid conversation about what forgiveness is really about, why it's so essential for moving on, and then what you actually need to do in order to get to a place where you can forgive somebody. I think the reason that people get so pissed off when we bring up the idea of forgiving your ex-wife is because forgiving her feels like giving in, right? It's like letting her win. It's condoning what she did. It's justifying her actions or saying that it's okay when it obviously isn't okay, right? She broke up your family. She bailed on a lifelong commitment that she made to you, right? She gave up on your marriage. And maybe it's far worse than that, right? Maybe she cheated. Maybe she lied. Maybe she's tried to take your kids from you or keep you from them. Maybe she's taken a lot of your money. She's taken your future, your financial freedom, your mental, emotional, maybe even your physical health. So yeah, forgiveness is a pretty touchy topic, and I don't blame you if it's not something you're like jumping up and down to do. However, I'm a divorce coach for men, and it has been my experience that forgiving her is actually a key piece of moving on. And here's the reason why. Forgiving her is not for her. It has nothing to do with her. She doesn't ever need to know that you do it. You don't have to tell her. You don't have to talk to her. Forgiving her is for you. Because when you haven't forgiven her, she's not the one who suffers from that. You are. You are the one who has to feel the anger, the resentment, the regret, that constant talking in your head, that voice that's like, well, it should have been this way, and she shouldn't have given up, and how could she do this, and what was she thinking, and this isn't right. You are the one who has to suffer from all of those thoughts, all of those painful, strong, overwhelming emotions. The other ones who suffer from this is your kids, if you have them, because they are half their mom. And someday they are going to wake up and see her in themselves. And then any judgment you've made towards her is going to be a judgment they feel on themselves, and that's going to be something that they have to reckon with as adults. So forgiveness is about diminishing your suffering and also helping your kids cultivate self-compassion and self-understanding. The other important thing to know about forgiveness is it's not about saying that it was okay that she did what she did. It probably is really, really not okay. That's not what forgiveness is. It's not a justification. It's not a condoning. It's not a, okay, it's fine, forgive and forget. Forgiveness is simply the ability to understand another person's suffering deeply enough so that you can understand how and why they would have come to behave in such a horrible way. That's all it is. Forgiveness is a level of understanding that allows you to feel compassion for the other person. That's it. You don't ever have to say the words, I forgive you. This is really, really important, so I'm going to say it again. Forgiveness is a feeling of compassion that you feel when you understand how she could have come to behave in the ways that she did. That's it. Doesn't mean she should have behaved that way. Doesn't mean she didn't have other options or couldn't have made different choices. It just means that you can see how she might have gotten there, and so you can have compassion for her because of that. And the magic of this is that it allows you to feel compassion. When you have compassion for her, she doesn't feel it. She doesn't even need to be aware that you're having it. Right? This is an experience for you. And the goal here is to replace anger, resentment, regret, those torturous thought loops about the why and the how and the what and what if and it should have, and replace that with just a feeling of compassion. That is going to take you so much closer to peace and happiness and a healthy future. What often happens instead of this understanding and compassion is that there's kind of this belief that it's not understandable. Right? What she did was so awful that there is no possible explanation. Right? And so we start to create this story where we make the other person into a kind of villain. And a villain is naturally just like this object of evil, right? That's not understandable. And I've actually heard a lot of men use the word evil to describe their ex-wives. But now you have to live in a world where this evil exists. And now you're kind of in this battle against it. And you have to be on guard because at any time it could come and get you. And look at the things she's already put you through. Right? And so you start to suffer because of this perspective, this view of her as the villain. And the reality is that she's still human. And the things that human beings do make sense. Doesn't mean they're right. Doesn't mean they're good. Trust me, humans do a lot of horrible, horrible, horrible things. And yet, if we could climb inside the brain which I, as a coach, get to do all of the time, right? This is the incredible gift that my clients give me, is they invite me to go with them into their brains and try to understand how and why they feel and think and act in the ways that they do. And what I've learned in going on that journey with hundreds of men and quite a few women as well, is that everything, the worst, most horrible actions we've ever taken, make sense when we can go inside our brains and understand what was driving that. What was the feeling? What was the belief? What was the misconception or the perception that drove that action? So often it's rooted in childhood stuff, in traumatic experiences, and in the often really tragic lessons that we learned about love when we were little. But it can be a lot of different things. And the thing is, for you to forgive your ex-wife, you don't have to climb inside her brain. You don't have to unpack all of that and try to understand how she arrived at this place, how she did what she did. There is a much better way to do it. And the much, in my opinion, better, faster, easier, healthier way to forgive her is to do that work on yourself first. So to climb inside your own brain and start to try to understand your own choices, your own actions, especially the ones you're ashamed of or the ones that you regret. Because if you can go in and do that work of making sense of it, what drove me to do that? What was the positive intention behind that horrible action which I regret? What was my brain doing? How did I even come to be in that place? What you will find every single time, if you go deep enough and you ask the right questions, is that it makes sense. And when you start to see that every action you've ever taken makes sense, even the ones that were not good, you'll start to have compassion for yourself. It doesn't mean that you won't learn from those actions or try to be better in the future. It just means you'll have compassion for the person that you used to be. And the more that you do that for yourself, the easier it will be to start to do for other people. So here's my recipe for forgiving your ex. I hope by now you see that if you actually do this, it's for you and not for her, and that you, and if you have kids, your children are the ones that are going to benefit from this, not her. But if you're ready to do forgiveness, there's two things I see as being necessary first steps. The first is to get your own emotions managed and under control. Emotional regulation, working with your nervous system so that you have the space and the energy and the mental freedom to actually do this exploration. Because if you are just hurting, if you're deep in grief, if your anger is overwhelming, if you've got too much shame or resentment, you can't think clearly. Right? When we have those strong emotions, our nervous system is revved up, we're in fight or flight all of the time, and we're just not able to access the full capacity of our logical brains. So first is to calm the nervous system, deal with the emotions. And second is to do this deep dive. Why do I do what I do? Why do I think like I do? How did I behave that way? How did I come to be this person in that moment in time? Right? And this self-awareness work leads to self-forgiveness. If you do these two things, if you get your own emotions dealt with, your nervous system calm and grounded and manageable, and then you take the time to really understand yourself and your behaviors and actions, I promise you, you will reach a level where the natural next step is to go, I can kind of see how she might have gotten to where she did. Doesn't mean I'm okay with it. Doesn't mean she's a good person. Just means that I can kind of get that maybe there's an underlying reason for her too, and I can have a little compassion for her. That tiny seed of compassion is going to set you free from so much anger and resentment and spiraling painful thoughts about the past. If you want to go deeper into this work with me, if you want to understand how to actually calm your nervous system and work with your emotions instead of constantly fighting against them or trying to suppress them, and if you want to know how to do this self-inquiry, this process of really deeply understanding your own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that leads to self-forgiveness, self-compassion, and eventually to even forgiving your ex-wife, then join me in my free masterclass. It's called How to Take Back Control of Your Life After Divorce. We'll go much more deeply. It's an hour-long masterclass. We'll go much more deeply into the how-to of all of this so that you can have some really concrete tools to start really recovering from, moving through, and past separation and divorce. Because the alternative is to resent your ex-wife forever. Do you really want to feel that? I don't think so. Anger is empowering. It helps us get out of depression and grief, but it's not a sustainable state. and forgiveness, this feeling of compassion. That is the best way that I know to set yourself free from the prison that anger and resentment can build for you. All right, so come join me in the masterclass. There is a link in the video description below this video, and I will see you guys there.